Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Black Studies Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Ozay Moore, who is the executive director of the All of the Above Academy. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Over the last 25 years, Ozay Moore, formerly known as Othello, has proven himself to be an exceptional storyteller time and time again, whether as a member of the classic hip hop trio Lightheaded or as a solo artist. Moore's flow has always moved crowds. Aided by soulful production and a deep knowledge of hip hop culture, Moore's music is highly relatable because he blends personal experience with larger themes that cross cultural lines. As an MC, DJ, muralist, and community organizer, he has been an asset to the national and international hip hop scene in a variety of capacities. Among countless artists, Ozay has graced the stage. His name has shared marquees with hip hop legends such as KRS-One, Rakim, De La Soul, and Slick Rick. His work has taken him around the world as a performer and speaker, where in both cases, he advocates for the preservation and advancement of hip hop culture. Venues such as the Kennedy Center in DC, the Knitting Factory in New York, House of Blues LA, the Blue Note in Tokyo, and the Jazz Cafe London, to name a few. His service to the broader community has led him to become the founder and executive director of the All of the Above Hip Hop Academy, an organization that mentors youth, supports artistic expression, and serves its community as a hip hop cultural resource. He has been recognized by the city of Lansing in its declaration of adopting June 26th as Hip Hop Day. He's responsible for co-directing Lansing's inaugural Below the Stacks Mural Festival and continues to light a path for aspiring artists of all ages to not only thrive in their creativity, but to engage in their communities. Hey, Ozay, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Ashley?
I'm doing pretty well. So it is extremely exciting to be able to talk with you today and catch up on some of the things that you and AOTA have been doing in recent years and in your new space, which you so kindly showed me before we started the recording. So we're going to get to that, but let's start with a little bit more about your background and like how you were introduced to hip hop and then like the hip hop education piece.
Yeah. So my introduction to hip hop is as early as I can remember. It was just a part of my lived experience. It was around. I don't remember a time where it wasn't somehow influencing my day to day. Even as a young kid, I had an older brother. He's about 15, 16 years older than me. So I'm born in 1981. Breaking and hip hop. This culture had made it to the West Coast, obviously, like early 80s, late 70s, especially the 80s, though. So as far as I can remember, my older brother was a b-boy. He pop locked and was breaking outside as kind of breaking culture kind of swept the nation. He was one of the people that got the bug, and I too got it early. I started playing around with my utilizing my voice and taking an interest in writing raps and rapping, in particular, in about like third, fourth grade. I got a karaoke box for Christmas, and it had a little Radio Shack mic and some blank tapes and some cassette singles, and it was a rap. I was just, I figured out early I could record my voice to a blank tape and also play an instrumental at the same time. And just all of a sudden I had a song. It wasn't my beat, but it was my words. And as as simple as the flows were and raps were, it was like, it just got the bug more. I knew graffiti writers growing up. They taught me how to bend letters. I knew DJs growing up. They kind of introduced me to the art of DJing and selecting music and beat makers. And so in Seattle, there was this melting pot of the whole culture and people from all over the world kind of contributing to it. You know what I mean? So that was the scene, and being kind of like dropped in the middle of it with some context already, but certainly a desire and passion to contribute not just as a fan, but to contribute. And I found my voice as an MC, an early MC too. So it's kind of like going to open mics and really like fleshing out that muscle and that gift and that medium by which I was able to express and articulate myself and also understand the world around me um, through this critical this critical lens of rhyme, right, and the unpacking of the world as I knew it as a kid. But the puzzle of making it rhyme, it just made you choose your words wisely or choose your words critically. And do I mean that? And what do I mean when I say that? Yeah. And that was my main medium from then to now. Over 30 years of rhyming and rapping and processing the world through that. But it also extended on to like the DJ piece and the graffiti piece and the writing piece. And so hip hop really was my sandbox. It's kind of where I found myself and processed the world around me and developed skills that extended beyond the world of hip hop. These transferable skills that I had no idea I'd be using them in the capacity I'm using them now. But if I were to circle back, we're like, that's where I learned how to do this. It's in that hip hop sandbox. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But that's in a nutshell how it all came to be.
That definitely does. And I want to build more, right, on the transferable skills and the role or your connection to like hip hop ed. And we can talk more about what AOTE is and what it does explicitly as a program that's like at the intersection of like the culture and education and helping students to develop those transferable skills in their own lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so much of it was kind of anecdotal. I think even in the idea of putting the programs together, it's like you couldn't tell me that hip hop culture wasn't a positive force in my life. So it was interesting having to have conversations with folks early on around, the preconceived notions of what hip hop is, what it isn't, what it can do, what it can't do, who it's for, who it's not for. I mean, yeah, I my lived experience in the culture was everything but the stereotypes. They were there. I think my context was different though. You see it and you're like, okay, that's a part of it, but that's not all of it. It's just an aspect. But, people only see what's amplified to them, or what's on their radar. Can I?
Okay, so I want to take a minute and just ask about AOTA. So you want to speak a little bit about the organization itself, like kind of how it started and like how it's gotten to where it is now, where you all have your own physical location and you are operating in many of the schools in the district. Yeah.
Yeah. So AOTA started as kind of a network of local artists who were kind of on the same frequency in terms of like understanding that hip hop is a force in society, and depending on how you can wield it intentionally, you know what I'm saying, to for some very specific outcomes, because we were all byproducts of the culture. And as adults and enthusiasts, loving the culture, loving the expression piece, also seeing that there is space to work with younger artists and help them develop their crafts by centering the context, the historical context, and preserve some of those pieces while holding space for the forward mobility of the culture. By helping develop skills in young people and offer access to resources that otherwise they might not have had to be able to develop their artistry. You know what I mean? So it started just like that, But we were also, as practitioners, we would do shows with each other. We would do beat battles with, we would facilitate events together, concerts, collaborations on each other's projects, and also, offer some after school mentoring opportunities for young people, and some summer programming, right? Um, so sorry, one second. The So it's kind of started. So yeah, we're doing that just as a loose knit group of folks, a community organization. And then I got an opportunity to work in Detroit as a teaching artist at a middle school, which introduced me to this concept of what I knew so well, hip hop culture kind of being activated or utilized in academic spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the utilization of hip hop in that space was pretty literal, right? Where it's like, hey, let's take English and social studies, flip it with some hip hop context, right? Let's take what we're learning in this curriculum and do some creative writing exercises, some raps, maybe some songs, So there was that real literal, like, let's hip hopify what we're learning. Let's hip hopify the curriculum, right? But that was the entryway into, as a teaching artist, the entryway in deeper conversations around hip hop ed. And then I got the bug again. It was like, this is so interesting, right? Like, they actually want me to come and talk about what I know. Cause I'm also someone who I didn't have a traditional path, right? I didn't graduate university and then move into this intentionally. This was me as a recording artist, a musician, like transitioning from, like, how do I have all these years of lived experiences, and now people want to talk about these in academia. They want to have conversations around hip hop culture and how it influences, impacts, and how it can be leveraged and utilized and celebrated and validated, right? And when you talk about culturally responsive teaching and learning, and how hip hop culture is like, it's synonymous with folks, Black and brown specifically, but just everybody growing up in today's age. It's like, it's part of your culture. Even dating back to 1981, when I was growing up, it was just a part of my lived experience. There was no, I found hip hop at this age. It was like, it was around me, But this was, about 14 years ago is when I started seeing the conversation shifted from, how do we celebrate hip hop outside of its expressions, exclusively, but in its impact socially, economically, developmentally, and start pulling back all these layers and started realizing that, like, oh my gosh, the intersections are so clear to me, right? Because I could see how my development at the intersection of writing raps and making beats, I was learning collaboration. I was learning agency. I was learning how to control my own narrative and tell my story. And also, I was developing some critical reasoning. And oh man, it was just like Pandora's box. It was like, what doesn't hip hop touch in terms of our humanity and our development? And so all the above Hip Hop Academy shifted from being this mechanism that's teaching kids how to write rhymes and make beats into this platform that explores youth development, artistic development, and hip hop cultural preservation and advancement, all under the umbrella of what the organization offers in terms of programs and workshops, symposiums, talks, and you name it, everything in the guise of that are what we offer the community. But with a real emphasis on what else is it doing now, and I think that's where folks like MSU or, a variety of different spaces in academia have really been interested in. Like, oh, let's talk more about that. How does that work? And how to make the connection there? And we could do it every single time. It's like, because hip hop is so human. It's a human response. It's a human response to, if you go back, it's a human response to there being these deficits and these real barriers in our society. And when folks are reclaiming their humanity through these historical and these cultural legacies and
Mhm.
expressions, you're finding that the power of these expressions really just kind of like roped in so much of the things that we care about as it pertains to our humanity, you know. So I think that's really how we shifted from being a hip hop, skill based institution, just teaching people how to make beats, how to write rhymes, how to break, how to DJ. Those are all the classes we offer, right? But in those spaces, figuring out what else is happening, and really supporting young people in their development. So, in a nutshell, that is AOTA. We do hold programs or offer programs to the community free of charge because we didn't have to pay to learn what we learned, and we believe eliminating that barrier allows for us to keep the main thing, and that is we believe the stakes are too high to have all these barriers to things that could prevent folks or save folks from, whatever ills, are waiting around the corner from them if they don't have a space to figure themselves out in a healthy community to do that in collaboration with. So we've taken a radical stance against kind of this capitalistic and colonial, um, I guess, trajectory or disposition in offering
Mhm.
arts programming. We've decided to say, hey, there's enough money out there circulating. We just got to tell really good stories about how this is impacting our young people. And 12 years later, we've just been growing, right? We've had access to the resources and the resources and tools we've needed to build a physical academy, to offer programming and pay our instructors well and still keep it barrier free to the public. Um, so it's big picture of like how we've done what we've done, and how we've arrived here. It's just really leaning on hip hop and how hip hop facilitates and runs and is celebrated as kind of our North Star, believing in its power and potential. And it hasn't led us astray yet, you know? So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That's so as someone who saw AOTA before the physical location and was
Mm-hmm.
so blessed and privileged to be able to sit in and see those early iterations, it is so amazing to see like where it is now and all of the expansion that you've been able to have, even with just like the tour that you were showing me beforehand, like having the tools for students to not only be able to like develop their craft but to know the history behind it, which is one of the things that I always so admired about the academy, was that it wasn't just, okay, we're going to work on this move or you're going to learn how to bend letters in this way, but like you're also going to learn like the history behind it. You're gonna know like who is attributed with bending letters in this way, and you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
know where this
Mm-hmm.
particular move came from. Like having that living memory be
Mm-hmm.
circulated among the students and to continue that going is one just so hip hop, but it's also like
Yeah.
so important to thinking about uh Black studies, which
Mm.
hip hop studies and hip hop ed can also fall under, in the ways in which that the histories are so important.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were just talking about, there's this, there is a conversation around, whether or not young people value the perspectives and advice of their elders and older folks, or folks who've
Mhm.
come before them. And, our personal belief is that they do, but it also, you have to value where they're coming from. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Mhm.
important that we hold space where the lived experiences of everybody involved are validated. I think when we first started, we very much were like, okay, we got to get these kids together. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach them the history. So that's always been a part of it, right? And we weren't as intentional about opening space for their perspectives in terms of where it's at now. It's like, yeah, we get it. We don't like it. So moving on. This is how you do it. Um, was not the way. But I think that's how a lot of folks, if you don't have a lot of, if you don't, first of all, if you don't understand the science behind, um, you know, validation and holding space where folks feel validated. And then on top of that, understanding, the power of that validation and safe space. And now that we do, there is we understand that when you validate, you're the opportunity to impart and add and also receive and learn from, right? We talked a lot about the pedagogy, right? And how it's very pedagogical, right? And how we do what we do. It is a shared learning experience. Um, you know, you learn, or at least we had to learn, kind of like the hard way of that it is better to be an OG for a younger person than to be an old head. We use these languages, right? And we're intentional about it. The OG offers real substance on how to navigate your circumstance, your reality. The old head essentially is just saying, hey, you're not doing it right. Do it like this because that's how we did it, right? But there is a difference, and to the point that young people do want to hear from their elders. They actually crave it. They want that, and they will give you the title of OG, right? This esteemed, like, you could be that because you actually gave me some game that I appreciate. You weren't just wolfing, in the background telling me to do this, that, and the third for no other reason. You can't even make it make sense to me, but to provide that real value. And we found that, like, yeah, when your disposition change, when you're able to validate and value the voice of everybody in the room, the opportunity for you to add value to the conversation from whatever your vantage point, whether you've lived it or you're curious about it, those barriers just come down. And so, yeah, it's fascinating to go from, concept, to practice, and to be revising our practice along the way, right? We have this other term that's like, we don't really fully believe in best practice as like a best practice. We only believe in better practice. So essentially you start out with, okay, this is what we're aiming for. Checks. It's safe. It's transparent. Yep. It can be sustained. Okay. Yep. It protects the culture. Yep. All those things. Check. And you get to a point where you're doing all that and society is in flux. People are changing, and so it's like, now what is best practice? We're all kind of like figuring it out together, so I guess we're all just chasing after better practice. Like, what is going to better serve our community? What's better serving our bottom line, our mission, vision? And are we nimble enough, flexible enough to be able to grow along the way and adopt those better practices so as to really serve the way that we want to, and the way so long ago we wanted to, but just had no idea what that path looked like. And so here we are 12 years later, better instructors, better artists, better community members, but, because we've been in pursuit of better practice,
So thank you. That was so great. And there are so many little things you said in that.
I told you I'm up here to rabbit trailing.
Oh, but like, I love it. So there's the pedagogy piece, which, I am all interested in for, and like, that is definitely, it was my focus then. It is a huge focus of mine now. But I think you also said a lot, not just about the pedagogical practices, but like what it takes to be a member of a community, right? And so, do you want to say a little bit about that, like, as a community organizer, someone who started a 501c in a particular space because, as someone who was born and raised
Mm.
in Lansing, Michigan, it is a
Yeah.
particular space. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm.
I don't know that, like, I would have imagined that ALTA would have existed when I was in high school in Lansing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's and to the part of kind of knowing thyself and knowing your community. Um, it's important, right? We as an organization have been learning ourselves, learning what do we truly believe and what's going to best impact this community and best serve this city. So to go back, being from Seattle's a very different
Mhm,
climate than Lansing. And you're right, Lansing is particular. It has its own history. It's the reason why things are the way they are
mhm,
for particular reasons, right? This is a blue collar town. It was, we're kind of dealing with post automotive industry that
mhm,
has like really changed the idea of the American dream here. And then you have this right across the freeway, a whole separate city called East Lansing that within that city has MSU. There's all these
mhm,
invisible walls everywhere. And then plopped right in the middle of Lansing, the automotive industry, is the capital. So you have government folks, you have politics, then you have this automotive industry that we're in the post era of it, right? And then right across the way, you have academia and you have wealth and you have privilege and you have a racist history,
mhm,
right? Of redlining and so on. So it is an interesting space to be in, and to be trying to think about, so where does hip hop fit here, right? And I think early on we started AOTA, we had this grandiose idea of like maybe franchising this model because we saw some success. We're like, okay, AOTA works and it brings people together, it organizes it. It can be a platform for local artists to figure out how to give back to their community and also provide some sustainability for those local artists who are between gigs or maybe not on tour or maybe like,
mhm,
you know, piecing it together a little bit, right? Um, so what we found early on though is that it's important to know where you're at and what works. I have this firm belief that, I come from an era in hip hop culture that was very regional and it had all these regional like characteristics, right? The
mhm,
South had a sound, West Coast had a sound, Northwest had a sound, Northeast, Midwest had a sound, and it was all kind of folks utilizing local ingredients and local history to inform their particular brand. And I think there's something so beautiful, not to make a case for older time in hip hop and why I like it more than the current state, but I think it makes more of a case for the importance of farm to table approaches in
mhm,
whatever you're doing, to kind of know the soil that you're in, to know the community you're in. It takes some it takes mm, some investigation, especially if you're a transplant, right? For us to do community well here meant for us to kind of take inventory of what's already here. Where can we add to what's already here? Where can we, highlight what's already here?
mhm,
But in both cases, how do we celebrate what's here first and foremost? How do we validate and say we appreciate this and we're here to add to, not subtract, not to take away, and not even to erase? This
mhm,
idea of like, I remember hearing the narrative like coming to Lance and saying, oh, it's like a blank canvas. It's like, that's really disrespectful. It's not a blank canvas. There's stuff that's here and there's beautiful things that are here. I think the idea is how do you add to or contribute to, um, and celebrate what's already in place and to do that well, which is a very different disposition than to come in and say, we're going to change the game. We're going to level this thing and do it right. So
mhm,
I think to do community well, there has to be an acknowledgement of what's already there and how you can contribute to where the collective wants to go with it, but certainly first and foremost to have the attitude that I want to be a part of this. I'm not coming with the answers. I'm not coming with, the savior mentality of like, I'm from a bigger city and we're going to do it. Like, I'm coming with perspective, but I'm also gaining perspective. Yeah, again, the pedagogical approach in every aspect of our life where learning is being facilitated together. And I think that's part of the reason why we call it all of the above. It's like we don't like compartmentalize the artistic practices, the transferable skill development, the community, who shows up, where we do it at. It's all kind of happening
Mhm.
at the same intersection, if that makes sense. So I think for us as AOTA to do community well, we're just mindful of all of what's really happening, both like in front and behind the scenes. And that's kind of our approach to doing community well, with just real intention.
Thank you. That's so important. And it's also, I think, as always, right? There's so many lessons and so much
Mm.
information and wisdom that can be gained through a perspective that is really rooted in hip hop culture. Like that's what
Hey, I don't disagree.
all of the in thinking about like where we're at right now in this current moment where there is an attack on Black studies and Black history in courses in particular areas. And, Lansing is Lansing, but Michigan is a swing state, and Michigan changes a lot in
Mm.
terms of what is supported there and what is seen as normal there and where budgets are allocated there. But like having that flexibility and acknowledging what exists in the space, even in like contributing and building and taking things to different levels or opening spaces up that might not have been open before, acknowledging that and having that legacy is
Mm.
really important. So, and
Yeah.
I think that that's applicable across the board. Like
Yeah.
about that in higher education, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too many times you have, and you can look at MSU. Too many times you have colleges that are in areas where they're not in community with the community
Mm-hmm.
that they're in, right? We're in these
Yeah.
separate spaces,
Mm-hmm.
and the Lansing, it is very stark because the Lansing East Lansing line is real. And
Mm.
growing up in Lansing, that's one, it's a whole nother city, but two, like it's a whole nother vibe. And
Mm-hmm.
you knew you're gonna act different when you go to East Lansing
Right. Right.
because you will
Yeah.
will stop you
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
So the importance of the regional understanding too.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of that, it's just all, yeah. I'm sorry, now I'm thinking about all of these overlaps and intersections again.
Mm.
Uh, but one of the things that you talked about in terms of like the equipment that's provided for students to like
Mm.
develop their skills and stuff is that you have like you're gonna have like the laptops and like the technology, but you also have some of those more analog tools
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah. Yeah.
preservation of that, which I think is particularly important in this moment where one, we have digital humanities and this idea of like the academic side of
Mm.
some of the tools and the programs and the software and all of the things that are available to us, but also um,
Mm.
this ever-present threat of what happens when things go digital and then like
Mm.
they go away. Uh,
Right.
like I saw a thing the other day that said like the Internet Archive hasn't been archiving for like the past month.
Mm.
And so what does that mean for looking backwards at this
Mm.
particular point in time if
Mm.
the structures that are supposed to be in place to catalog these things are not operating how they should?
Mm.
So do you want to speak a little bit about the importance of the balance between the digital and the new, but also the analog, and being able to physically touch and develop these sounds and these ideas
Mm.
alongside the technological availability?
Yeah, it reminds me of, the importance of the griot, right? Or the griot,
Mhm.
um, where we carry the history with us, right? And in hip hop, I think the storytellers, the artists, I mean, we all have this in every discipline of hip hop culture, right? From the dancer to the DJ to the, I mean, we carry this knowledge, having spaces to share it so as to not erase,
Mhm.
right? Or and the, to have our history be so volatile that if it's not archiving it, right? If we're not relying on a machine to archive it, we archive it. We
Mhm.
archive it simply because it makes our experience within it that much more robust. It makes your connection to the legacy, the stories, the struggles, it impacts your the space and time that you're in too, and your understanding of the space and time and the legacies that you're inheriting. You know, yeah, sense of self and where you fit in the big picture. So we see, the preservation and advancement piece in the work that we do as one of our three pillars. It's youth development, it's artistic development, but then it is, it is, cultural preservation and advancement. That's why we do what we do. Those things kind of exist as the triune for AOTA. Because let's be real, the crazy train that is hip hop industry, um, where everything is disposable, right? Where fads come and go. And I think the very people who can lay claim to, who have the birthright, right? Who lay claim to, hey, we started this, we built this, Black and brown folks, New York City, right? Like, in that lived experience, that particular lived experience that like birthed this beautiful culture. Um, because the crazy train of the industry moves at such a rapid rate to where it would also have us forego ownership, not
Mhm.
just in terms of our masters and our music and but like the cultural contribution, right? Where
Mhm.
it's vague. It's like, oh, it's a black thing, or it's a Latino thing, or it's a them thing. It's like it's not just a us thing. This is the byproduct of a legacy that we all have contributed to through, right? But also lived at a particular moment in time and gave birth to something that would go on to provide platforms for the entire world. So yes, we should own that, meaning we should value the history, right? Like I think about like the ownership in classical music. Let's just use that as an example, where like there's not a single cello player or classically trained musician who doesn't know who Bach or Beethoven is, right?
Mhm.
They know these people because they have made the standards, right? The standards that every person who is picking up that instrument, you're going to learn our standards. The standards are Mozart, something, something, number three, whatever. Can't even pretend to know the names of these concertos, right? But not the same energy when it comes to our culture, right? It's like because the crazy train is that, hey, and it's uh, partially built and developed through exploitation and appropriation, right? What do we do? Well, we'll just keep on reinventing the wheel. We'll keep it fresh, we'll keep it innovative, we'll keep remixing, right? And we just, oh, you claim that? We don't even do that no more. We're doing this now. And as soon as they appropriate or claim that, oh, we don't even do that no more. We do this, right? So it's almost this built-in mechanism where it has created like this the momentum for innovation and like constantly making what's fresh, what's hip, what's new, what everybody wants to celebrate in terms of black folks and people of color's contribution to the world of music, right?
Mhm.
The hard part is that we need to also be able to own everything that we're making and contributing. Like that's ours too. It's not just, and I think once we shift from like we're only the industry mindset, right? This capitalistic piece where it's like this hip hop is serving me only in the capacity of like its financial gains, but also into this like this deep this deep understanding and deep feeling of belonging and being connected to those who came before you, the genius that was before you, and also being able to claim that as part of our experience and part of our contributions to the world. We could do both. I'm not saying don't get your money. I'm not saying don't make hits or whatever if that's what you want to do. But that piece, that knowing the
Mhm.
culture and preserving the culture does so much more for you as an individual navigating the spaces and time we exist in than the small percentage chance of you making a lucrative living off of rap or dance. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole other ballgame. So the idea is that this culture can impact you in real ways beyond financial gain in terms of like your understanding your self-worth, your value, the legacy that you've inherited and get to carry out and live. Um, that's all me. That's currency. You know, it's currency, even if it's just your own
Yeah.
currency. It's value. It's gold that you have. Um, you know, and so that's the reason why it is just important for us to hold space for like, yeah, where do you want to take it? But also, you are going to get this history. You have to get this context. We have to be able to validate Hurt. We have to validate Flash. We have to validate Cindy. We have to validate the folks who came before us, because that's why we're able to do what we're even doing, and to know that they created. There's also a narrative like you don't have to have everything to make a significant impact on the world,
Mhm.
right? Like what you have is really of no significance as to your value and worth, and that's a part of that story. Like you can
Mhm.
change the entire world with meager accommodations, you know. Yeah, anyway, I know I'm rabbit trailing, but that's why that history piece is like so crucial to us, because it goes beyond just us pontificating about like, you got to know who so and such is because they started this. You know, there's this invitation from young people to make it make sense. And I think that's where we really start to explore those intersections, because to be asked to make it make sense, it requires you to do the math and the
Mhm.
knowledge and the digging and the investigation as to why it's so important. I think my generation knew that it was important, but couldn't always articulate why. And I think to make it make sense, we have to figure out why. And it makes us dig a little bit, dig into our own personal experiences, dig into the cultural climate implications of hip
Mhm.
hop's contribution through some different lenses. And yeah, I think that has been. I love that invitation. Every time a kid asks me, make it make sense. I'm like, bet I will. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. And if I can't, then forget what I just said, bro. It don't make sense. This is me being biased. At this point, I'm just being biased. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't like it because I don't like it, but I'm biased. You know. But to make it make sense, that's a very different invitation. I think we can, if we're willing to be wrong, be challenged, and keep the main thing is that this is human. This is people. It's about people more than it is anything else. About people more than it is what's real hip hop and what's not real hip hop. It's about people at the end of the day. And I think that is the motivation behind why we want to make it make sense. You know what I mean?
Thank you. That was really informative and insightful, and, like, just thinking about all of, again, the lessons and the transferable ideas, to keep the main thing, to make it make sense. I think it's so important right now too, especially with everything, right? We need to make it make sense in all of our interactions with young people and students. We gotta make it make sense. And if we make it make sense, then they're gonna be more open to receiving why this information is important for them to know, or why we brought it up in the first place. So again, pedagogically, I'm just like, it all connects.
Yeah. Yo, you gave me, I think when you were doing your dissertation with AOTA, you 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 put me on a path with the Paulo Freire um, reading the pedagogy of the oppressed, right? That it was so dense, right? So densely packed, but it really had you it really kind of started illuminating the intersections of where it's all interconnected, from
Mhm.
justice to equity to expression and the preservation of cultural like narratives and legacies, and why all this stuff is important. And it comes back to human, right? It comes back to what supports us as human beings. And I think that at that point, I mean, when a young person feels supported, it makes sense. All of
Mhm.
a sudden, everything you say, it's like, I might disagree with you on it, but I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming. We have kids show up, and I always marvel at this. Like, we say, okay, your time commitment, we're doing the program at your school, but your time commitment is to come here 2 times a month, get these lessons. We're gonna have these conversations around what you want to do with the rest of your life, where you're trying to go, how can we bring resources in to help you do that, right? And then it was like I was telling you before, we started with this 3-year plan to be in all 3 high schools, but we wanted to give each high school a year to
Mhm.
really figure out the blueprint and figure out, what does that particular high school and community need. So to thinking long term like that, we're going to be in all 3 high schools in 3 years. It's like part of you just wants to be in all 3 high schools at once. Let's just do it. But we knew that the research, investigation, having an understanding allows for you to make it make sense in more spaces than
Mhm.
you even give it credit for off rip. We found out that when you offer something that young people care about, they'll show up. So you find out that young people have to have some stake into what's being offered. They have to have some say into what's being offered, right? It doesn't take away from your contributions or what you might add to or might suggest or contribute, but that validation is huge. And that was, again, that was part of what we found in this making it make sense. It's like we got to, if we're expecting young people to give us the time, one, being hip hop does not all of a sudden make you like a good candidate to why they would want to rock with you, right? Like
Mhm.
you could be saying one version of hip hop I'm not even interested in. Like I don't care about your era in hip hop. What, you gonna teach me all about that? I don't care, right? But to make it make sense, right? To say, this is my era. What's your era? Let's talk about it. What from my era would benefit y'all, and vice versa. And beyond hip hop, let's just talk about you as an individual and where you want to go with your life. That makes it sense to young people. It's like, oh, I can trust y'all. I can trust you not just to preach at me about hip hop and this sort of thing, but you actually care about my life. Wow. So again, back to the human piece. Like, do we
Mhm.
care? Do we care enough to forego and set aside our biases to eliminate the barriers that could be eliminated, right? Like, make it make sense. Why are you holding on so hard to that? It ain't serving nobody but you. You know,
Um,
make it make sense. What are you here for? Are you here to help me out? Are you here to like uh coerce me to believe like you? You know? Anyway, yeah, that's the work. That's the work.
Indeed, that is the work, and that's the work all of us should be invested in across the board.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah, that's the work we all need to do. So I know you are busy. I do not want to take too much more of your time, but I do want to ask what interests or excites you most about like where you see hip hop culture and hip hop ed going.
Oh, perfect segue too, because I think part of what you were kind of alluding to, or like another piece that in my long rants of kind of unpacking what's in my brain with these particular prompts, is that like, yeah, the political climate we're living in right now, the polarization, I think this idea of making it make sense. It's like, yeah, we get the opportunity and to do that, but also the young people's perspectives. Um, I'm always fascinated by the way they kind of mm, reduce these macro concepts and ideas into these they distill it, I should say,
Mhm.
into these very, very concise and poignant challenges, right? Make it make sense is one of them. But I think also, like, I'm so inspired by young people, like to go from like somebody who really didn't care too much about what young people had to say about anything, especially as it pertained to hip hop, my own personal bias all those years ago, to a place where I feel like the world is in good hands and it has the potential of being what folks have dreamed for it to be, have worked hard for it, what our ancestors have worked hard for it to be. To see these young people keep the main thing and call out power structures that, and to have the power to do so, right? Because they are, I think Gretchen Whitmer said something so crazy where she says racism is bad for business. So regardless of what you believe,
Well,
just know that the workforce coming up is going to demand some very particular things. And it's not going to look like 40 years ago, where these were the norms, right?
mhm.
It's going to be way more justice centered, right? Way more diversity centered, equitable, inclusive, all these pieces. Like, this is a generation and this is the norm for them. This is what they know. It's like,
Mhm.
you can't make it make sense to me with all the information I have as to why we should go back, right? So many political connotations there that I don't even care to go into. But the reality is, regardless of what happens right now, I believe what's coming down the pipeline is a generation and the perspectives of young people to where when they enter into positions of power, it's going to be harder to make things that are not serving all people make sense. And that excites me. I think hip hop, and we've talked about this early on, but Mos Def, now Yasin Bey, made the comment, if you want to know where hip hop is going, you got to see where the people are going. There is no disconnect. It is the lived experiences of people are ultimately going to inform what hip hop looks like, sounds like, feels like.
Mhm.
And so the two things are interchangeable, right? Or not even interchangeable. They just are connected, just symbiotic. They're connected. And so, yeah, with that, I'm excited about what the youth have to bring to the table. I'm excited about their perspectives, their energy. I'm seeing a resurgence of young people in hip hop validating some of those early pieces and celebrating them, having been able to make it make sense in their own way,
Mhm.
right? Beyond a fad, but a true connection to, this is our history, this is our culture, and I actually love it. I care about it. I want to protect it. It's like the ownership that young people are taking over the culture. I just think it's amazing. And I think it's synonymous to what we can expect. That type of energy with even our nation and what's happening in the world, where the expectation is a lot different than what it was
Yeah.
in an America we grew up in, you know what I'm saying, or we're little in. Or so, shout outs to the youth for calling us out to make it make sense, and to calling us out on our biases, and to being really bent towards what's right for all people, for the most part. That's at least the experiences I'm getting from young people in Lansing. I can speak for Lansing. I can't speak for the South. I can't speak for these other regions fully, but I'm inspired by the youth in my community and what they're about and what they're pushing for. And yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see that ring true in a lot of cities, in a lot of spaces where young
Mhm.
people now have access to the information. I think the erasure of history is the only thing that would, it is an attack on being able to have the references to be able to make it make sense in a way that truly does, because you can point back to what has happened before. If they can't do that, then we're jeopardizing the ability for young people to really call out and expect us to do better, or expect a better world.
Mhm.
Um, so it makes sense to me why that has been a what do you call it? A tactic. Anyway, let me stop before I get in trouble over here.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, you can do whatever you want on this podcast.
Oh, right on. Cool. Well, hey, vote, y'all. Um,
Listen.
yeah. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. It's the times we living in, yo. Ashley, it's crazy. They out here trying to erase all kind of history and act like things didn't happen. Take
Yeah.
the books out the libraries, take the curriculum out the schools, penalize people for mentioning this. What a crazy tactic. If it's not illuminated, and it's like folks aren't going to get away with it. Not like that. They trying, but what happens when something is? What happens when you back a dog up against the wall, right? And you back the dog up against the wall, it is not going out without biting,
Yep.
scratching, being nasty, and it's backed up against the wall. Some of these old ways of doing things is backed up against the wall, and I think we have what it takes to put the old dog to rest in some way, shape, or form. But yeah.
I agree. And I think it's an important reminder at all times and in this moment. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing in my hometown and the amazing opportunities that uh exist through the community collaboration that is AOTA. So, and thank you so much for not just your time today, but for providing me with that time back when I was in grad school with the academy, because it was truly transformative for
Mm-hmm.
my trajectory. So, thank you.
I reflected right back to you, Ashley. I mean, we were just hip hop kids who believed that we could do something with this for real. And your dissertation gave us the language, but we didn't have the language. We didn't know what was happening, why it worked, why it made sense. We just knew it made sense. So your dissertation, I mean, we went back, we combed through that thing. We were like, man, just when she said, it prompted our own research and study, So it has been like a reciprocal, and it has been a good relationship between us and academia because I think we were able to demonstrate in practice how these things work. There was also language given to us and provided to us to be able to talk about in different spaces why what we do works and why it makes sense. So thank you. I mean, your dissertation lives in a Google Doc at AOTA for real, and when folks go back, So thank you for all your work and thank you for this space. Seriously, we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of your day, but I truly appreciate you and your time and all that you're doing.
Likewise.